Good morning. How you doing today? Today is September 7th, 2018. I'm Cody Robert Judy, running as a write-in candidate for the state of Utah for U.S. Senate. You can write my name in. Today I was impressed to talk about the heritage of the state of Utah. And you certainly can't talk about the heritage or the history of the state of Utah unless you remember the pioneers who traveled here and established it. Brigham Young, the first governor of the state of Utah, walked into this valley and said, "This is the place." What a trip. What a trip that was. What an exodus from the state of Missouri all the way across the plains, through the mountain passes, and to come down and look at what nearly was a swamp as well as a salt sea, or what we know as the Great Salt Lake. Looks a lot like Israel, and we've named a lot of places in remembrance of the habitat of the old Jerusalem. I love the fact that I'm not a member of any particular religious sect, and I'm a very spiritual man, and I can say that God has preserved me and protected me and guided me through some very, very hard times, and I am grateful for that. It was interesting when I came out of prison. I did about 3,018 days total. It was interesting that in the year 2000, when I was first paroled, I had a dream. It was like the night before I was going to be released, or within 2 or 3 days. And I remember Fox 13 in Utah was coming out to do a story on me and my release. If you can imagine this, I'm in prison set to be released, and you can vote as long as you're not currently incarcerated. It's one thing a lot of people don't understand. The Constitution doesn't prohibit your voting based on, prior servitude. I think that's the 15th Amendment. Race, color, or previous servitude is mentioned. And if it was just set up for the blacks, then it wouldn't have mentioned race, color, and prior servitude. I think that was very inspired. You know, we expect prisoners to come out and pay taxes, and if we didn't allow them to vote, it would be taxation without representation. We even tax the prisoners inside prisons. They pay taxes on commissary. I think prisoners are probably some of the most fortunate people in many ways, because they have a time to reflect on past mistakes and repent and serve their time. And once that time is served as society has dictated or ordered, they should be able to come out and join our society as a full-fledged citizen. And there's some things that are still not right. A lot of people discriminate, and they don't want prisoners to be able to vote, but they want them to pay taxes, don't they? They don't want prisoners to be able to defend themselves, but they believe in the Second Amendment. You know, how would you feel if prisoners came out and demanded their right to protect themselves against harm or accident or assault, and because we didn't allow them the Second Amendment, we had to provide protection for them with a bodyguard? That would cost a lot of money. You know, police and sheriffs, they're respondents. You call a 911 call or call for 911 and help, they get there in about, between 5 and 10 minutes. And after that, the incident is over. So you don't have a lot of time to defend yourself in harm's way. And if society really was proud of the rehabilitation services, then there should be no reason that they should fear the vote of a person who has served their time and according to the laws of the land. And I did. But 2 or 3 days before I got out, I had a dream, and the Lord had told me to run for office, which I had never even conceived before, and I thought that was really strange. But I got up for that interview the next day, and I got up early in the morning, and I went and copied out of the law books the write-in candidacy form that you filled out to run as a write-in candidate. And guess whose office was up for re-election that year? It was Senator Hatch's. And I think it's almost a full circle that I am again a write-in candidate for the retiring Senator Hatch and the office of U.S. Senator in the state of Utah. I had no idea where that journey would take me, but it had taken me a lot of places. I first ran for that write-in office in the year 2000. And then in 2002, I ran for U.S. Representative in the 1st Congressional District of the state of Utah. That would have been the northern part that Congressman Hansen had retired from. And the big hoopla in that particular race was the Daily Show came out and did a kind of a little skit on that race, and there was like 16 candidates in the field, and they came out. Jon Stewart and The Daily Show came out with, and Mo Rocca was the reporter, and they did a feature on me that was called the Con in Congress. I thought that was pretty funny, but I remember the last word of that little skit. You can Google that and find it. Just look up The Daily Show, Mo Rocca, Cody, Judy, the Con in Congress. It's pretty funny, and everybody got a good kick out of that. And then that was 2002, and then in 2004 I ran for U.S. Senate again, and I ran as a Democrat and participated in all the primary festivities and going to every county and giving 5-minute speech, and had banners and billboards and TV commercials, radio commercials, and I got beat out by I think his Paul Van Dam. He became the primary candidate that won the primary anyway in the Democrats. And then I switched gears because I still thought that was a mistake, and ran as a write-in. And then and he lost that race. He lost that race. Just trying to think who won that race. Can't remember. I guess it was Mike Lee. Senator Mike Lee won that race. And then in let's see, 2008, I made a big jump from running for U.S. Senate, and I ran and was really inspired to run again for U.S. President. And the motivating factor for me to run for president was when I looked, there was a Time magazine cover with John McCain's picture on the front of it, and it said something about, the headline was something about, for honor. And I was just infuriated as I read that article, because I knew Senator McCain was not a natural-born citizen. He was born in the country of Panama, not in a naval base. He was born in the Panama hospital. So he always maintained a Panamanian native-born son citizenship. That's just the way it was. He had U.S. citizen parents, but he was not born in one of the states of the Union. And natural-born citizen is born in the U.S. to U.S. citizen parents. In our Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5, it states that only a natural-born citizen or a citizen at the time of the adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible. And that right there articulated exactly what a citizen was. In that state, it was the patriot citizens who first came under the jurisdiction of law of the U.S. Constitution. It was a new jurisdiction that was established. And the natural-born citizens of that new jurisdiction would have been citizens who had children in one of the states. Citizens of the U.S. who had children born in one of the states. And so our first, I think, 5 presidents were patriot citizens. They were not natural-born citizens. They could not have been born in the United States of America because there was no United States. There was no Union of States. And so the jurisdiction of this land had been, divided into countries, different countries that were, claiming ownership of this land. And then the Constitution of the United States was ratified, and the first 13 states constituted the United States under that jurisdiction of law. Kind of a neat story. And then as the states expanded, you could be born in one of those states. I remember Senator Barry Goldwater. He was born in a territory which did not constitute one of the states of the Union. And so there was a uproar about his qualifications. But throughout the history of the United States, we've really been particular and narrowly focused that qualification as a wall of protection for the office of the president, that because the commander-in-chief of the United States Army and National Defense Force comes under the authority of the President of the United States. And sympathies or even resentments can come in and influence in an unrighteous manner those who are born to a different country, are native-born citizens to a different country, or have one or more parents that are foreign citizens. Obviously, that influence is going to impact their life. And it's really the acclimation period of time of 2 generations. If people immigrated over here to the United States, then became U.S. citizens, they had their life or their time as a U.S. citizen, and then their children born after they became U.S. citizens obviously would have an acclimation period of time where not only the influence of their parents came in to train and guide the child up to the point of 35 years. You've got to be 35 years old to become a candidate. That's one of the qualifications. And so that really is a wall protecting the national security of the United States of America from a foreign power. Say North Korea's Kim Jong-un decided that he wanted to finance an heir of his over here to the U.S. presidency. Well, all he would have to do is come over and grab a wife or a U.S. citizen, a female, and they have a child, and then he's got his whole force of government and finance that could potentially, usurp the office of the presidency. And so not only being born in one of the states of the Union is important, but also the influence of U.S. citizens as parents was a protection. It made a two-generation protection. And in that two-generation protection, we would see that if Kim Jong-un, let's say, came over here and had a wife and they had a child over here, then that child would be a U.S. citizen based on his mother's U.S. citizenship. But that child wouldn't be eligible. He's got a foreign father. But that child, if he stuck around, married another U.S. citizen, then that child would have a two-generation acclimation period of time. And Kim Jong-un would be old and gray by the time that child was 35 years old. And he'd probably be dead. So it took the incentive right out of usurping the office of the president that way. And so it was real wise when our ultimately first Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, John Jay, wrote to our first, who would be our first president, George Washington, saying that it might be wise and seasonable to demand in the Constitution that only the office of the president only devolve upon a natural-born citizen, or two generations in America, the United States of America, especially in the order of protecting the Army of the United States from a foreign power. Understanding that, I sued Senator John McCain because I did not feel like it was honorable for him, especially as a senator, knowing that acclimation period was a defense wall of national security. I didn't feel like it was honorable for him to get in the race and basically rob people of their donations. As a candidate for the office of the presidency. And I thought, if the conservative party was working hard to usurp the Constitution of the United States of America, we were in real trouble. Because there was no other more conservative, big party in the United States. Republicans and Democrats basically controlled those two big parties. And it was pretty doggone hard to manage a campaign that could overcome that. And you had to have standing, which is basically meant you had to be in the race to object to another candidate's qualifications. And so I ran as a write-in candidate in 2008. And in that lawsuit against Senator McCain, I included an emergency petition and motion to also include Barack Obama, and I inserted Philip Berg's U.S. Supreme Court case against Senator Barack Obama that had gone to the U.S. Supreme Court and been rejected because he was not a candidate for U.S. president. And he lacked the standing. And I wrote Mr. Philip Berg and told him if I could join that lawsuit as a candidate, I would, but I guess it was happening too fast. And you don't have a lot of time by the time you get to know who the party's nominee is going to be. After that point, you would know who was qualified and who wasn't. And if it mattered. And that's one of the big problems. Is you just don't have a lot of time after a major party nominates someone who's not eligible. By that time, big wheel is rolling, and millions of dollars have been poured into the campaign, which is basically a robbery that has taken place for a usurpation of the office. And I don't think that should be rewarded. And Senator Cruz has done the same thing, and Senator Rubio. They are also not natural-born citizens. And, people say, well, they're loyal to the United States. Well, that wasn't the only factor. You've got to also consider, and Congress did, in the House Judiciary Committee, they held hearings on that subject because, since 2000, John McCain was trying to get that natural-born citizen clause removed. He knew he was not qualified, and that's why he was trying to get it removed and replaced. But, 9 times since 2000, it's been put before Congress or proposed, and it's been rejected. The rejection of that is a manifestation of the will of the people. And so it's the will of the people that actually was usurped in the office of the president by Senator Barack Hussein Obama. And in my case, with Senator McCain listed as the major, complaint, the judge waited and waited and waited, and I filed 4 notices of appeal, or notice for a decision, and he waited until after the election to rule on it. And then he said the case was moot because Senator McCain had lost. And I understand, when a judge is ruling on a major election like that, and a major choice of a major party, it's a difficult thing, but our country is established on the principles of a constitutional republic, which means the individual can stand up against the masses, and if he's right, he can prevail. It's not a pure democracy where the mob rules. If it wasn't that way, pure democracy, mob rules. You don't have any rights as an individual. And even Democrats know that. the eminent domain clause, where the city would confiscate someone's private property because of the public good, a highway is going through or something like that. They had issues, Democrats had issues on some of the financial and business dealings of properties owned by the Trump Corporation. Based on that eminent domain, they wanted the individuals' rights upheld against eminent domain, especially when it came to candidate Trump, who became President Trump. So then, to maintain my standing and my lawsuits, which continued in 2012, I had to declare it for presidency again. And in 2008, I ran as a write-in and voted for myself. And in 2012, I was a candidate, constant candidate, with a full campaign, website, commercials, all the hoopla of a campaign, and invested a lot of time and energy in the primary against Barack Obama. And I had real standing in that one also, where the Republican candidate really didn't have, who was Mitt Romney, he didn't really have standing to sue Barack Obama until he became the GOP nominee. So as long as there was a contest in the Republican Party, there wasn't a conflict. They had to become the nominee. But once Mitt Romney became the nominee, he refused to challenge Barack Obama on his qualifications for the office of the president. And the biggest reason he refused to is because he was backed by Republican senators. And Senator McCain had gone to his U.S. Senate buddies and said, listen, I got a problem. I'm not a natural-born citizen. Will you pass a non-binding Senate resolution that says I can run for presidency? I'm a natural-born citizen. And they said, sure, you're our buddy, McCain, and we don't care about that. We don't think that our founders and forefathers had that interest in mind. As a complete disrespect of law. It was a complete disrespect of their oaths, and at that time, our current Attorney General, Attorney General Sessions, was a U.S. Senator of the Republican Party. So we have a little bit of understanding of why President Trump, when he goes to his Department of Justice, headed by Attorney General Sessions now, Attorney General Sessions looks upon his own personal record that's disgraceful when it came to allowing Senator McCain to run. It was hypocritical. And that's what happens. The law doesn't change, though, based on blackmail or hypocrisy. The law is still the law. And when Senator McCain asked for that non-binding Senate Resolution 511, guess who were the co-sponsors? Well, two of them were Senator Barack Obama and Senator Hillary Clinton. Oh yeah, we'll let you do that, Senator McCain, because we've got a candidate that is got a problem also. Senator Barack Obama had a problem. And it didn't change the law. A non-binding Senate resolution does not change the Constitution. You need 2/3 of Congress. And they had tried and tried and tried and tried and tried and tried and tried that route, which would have been the Constitution's built-in flexibility, and there were too many representatives and too many senators representing the will of the people. You said, no, that's not a good idea. We're not going to change it. We need that protection in the office of the president, which was the people's will. So I took that case clear to the U.S. Supreme Court in 1252-76, Judy versus Obama. And that was the first case also that included in the U.S. Supreme Court the evidence which had been brought into that case of Obama's long-form birth certificate, forged and fabricated, fraudulent ID, had been disseminated and declared by a law enforcement investigation, which was Sheriff Joe Arapao's cold case posse, that there was problems with that fake ID. And